Zamora was the kind of village people rarely left and strangers rarely found. It rested between wide golden fields and a thick green forest that whispered whenever the wind passed through. Every morning, the sun rose slowly over the clay huts, painting the ground in warm orange light while roosters crowed and women swept their doorsteps. The air smelled of roasted maize and firewood, and the sounds of bargaining floated from the small marketplace near the village well. Life in Zamora followed rhythm and routine. Farmers walked to their fields, traders displayed fruits and grains, children laughed on their way to fetch water. It was a simple life, predictable and honest, and the villagers believed that everyone had their own portion of destiny waiting for them. Some were born into large families with land and cattle, some into skilled households of blacksmiths or traders, and others into modest homes where survival itself was a daily victory. The elders often said, "A person's path is written before their first cry," and most people accepted this without question. Yet among all these villagers, there was one boy people spoke about differently, often in lowered voices or with a shake of the head. His name was Tano, and many believed destiny had written his story with a broken pen. Tano lived in a small mud hut at the edge of the village, where the road met the forest path. He had no parents to guide him and no brothers or sisters to share his burdens. Some said sickness took his family when he was very young, others claimed they had simply left one season and never returned. No one knew the full truth anymore, and in Zamora, stories changed with time. Tano survived by doing small jobs, carrying firewood, helping farmers harvest, running errands in the market. He worked harder than boys his age, waking before sunrise and sleeping long after the moon climbed high. But no matter how sincere his effort was, things seemed to go wrong around him. If he helped plant seeds, sudden dry winds followed. If he carried pots to market, one would slip and crack. If he watched goats, one would wander off. At first, people laughed it off as coincidence. "The boy is just careless," they said. But when the pattern repeated again and again, the laughter changed into suspicion. Whispers began to follow him like shadows. A trader once muttered, "Wherever Tano helps me, I lose money." A farmer complained, "My best harvest failed the week he worked in my field." Slowly, quietly, a label attached itself to him, and labels in small villages stick harder than glue. Children, who often repeat what they hear at home, started calling him Unlucky Tano. At the well, they would giggle and say, "Don't stand too close, or your luck will run away." Some adults avoided giving him work unless they had no choice. Others paid him less, as if misfortune had a price. Tano heard it all. He heard it when women spoke behind their hands, when men shook their heads, when boys teased him as he passed. Each word pressed on his chest like a small stone, and over time those stones felt heavy. Still, he rarely argued. He would lower his eyes, nod politely, and continue working. Deep inside, though, questions stirred. Why did things fail only when he was involved? Why did effort never match reward for him? On quiet evenings, he would sit outside his hut, watching the sky turn purple and then dark, listening to distant laughter from families sharing meals. He wondered what it felt like to belong somewhere, to be welcomed instead of tolerated. He wasn't angry at the village, just tired, confused, and a little sad in the way only someone used to disappointment can be. Yet even then, a small part of him refused to stop trying. The next day, he would still wake early, still offer help, still hope that maybe this time things would be different. One market day, Tano saved enough to buy a small bundle of firewood to resell. He carried it carefully, step by step, telling himself this could be a good day. The sun was bright, and buyers were everywhere. For a moment, it seemed hope might finally win. Then, as he set the bundle down, the rope tying it snapped. The wood scattered into the dust, and a passing cart rolled over part of it, breaking several pieces. A few people sighed, others shook their heads knowingly. "There it is again," someone said. "That boy's shadow carries trouble." No one meant to be cruel, yet their words stung all the same. Tano gathered what he could, sold it for almost nothing, and walked away quietly. That evening, he didn't return to the busy part of the village. Instead, he walked toward the forest path near his hut, where tall trees blocked the noise of people and the world felt bigger than one small village's opinion. The forest had always been a place where he could breathe, where no one called him unlucky and no one measured his worth by broken pots or failed harvests. He followed the narrow trail deeper than usual, listening to birds flutter and leaves rustle under his feet. The air there was cooler, calmer, as if the forest itself did not believe in human labels. As the sun began to lower and golden light slipped between the branches, Tano sat on a fallen log and let out a long breath he didn't realize he had been holding. For the first time in many days, he spoke his thoughts out loud, quietly asking the empty air why life felt harder for him than for others. He wasn't asking for riches or miracles, just a fair chance. The forest remained silent for a moment, or so he thought. Then a strange feeling crept over him, the kind that makes the back of your neck tingle. It felt as if someone was nearby, listening. He turned his head slightly, scanning the trees, expecting to see a hunter or another villager passing by. But the path behind him was empty. He looked ahead, only shadows and tall trunks. Just as he convinced himself it was his imagination, a calm, aged voice drifted from somewhere among the trees and called his name softly, clearly, as if it had known him for years. Tano. He froze. His heart beat faster, and every sound in the forest seemed to pause. Slowly, he stood up, trying to locate where the voice had come from. Someone had called him, and whoever it was, knew his name. Tano. The voice was neither loud nor frightening, yet it carried a strange weight, like a sound that had traveled a long distance. Tano turned slowly, his eyes searching between the tall trees where evening light mixed with shadow. For a moment, he thought it might be one of the village elders playing a trick, but no one from Zamora ever came this deep into the forest at sunset. The leaves rustled again, and from behind a wide baobab tree stepped an old man Tano had never seen before. His robe was simple but unusually clean for someone walking in the forest, and it hung on him in neat folds. His beard was long and white, not messy like a wanderer's but smooth like cotton prepared with care. His walking stick looked older than the man himself, carved with small symbols and patterns that Tano didn't recognize. Yet what caught Tano's attention most were the old man's eyes. They were calm, sharp, and observant, like someone who had watched many seasons come and go. The man did not look surprised to see Tano there. In fact, he looked as if he had been expecting him. Tano swallowed his nervousness and spoke carefully. "Do you know me, sir?" The old man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds secrets. "In a village like Zamora," he replied, "a boy who carries both effort and misfortune is not hard to know." Tano felt a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. He wasn't used to strangers speaking gently about his struggles. Most people either mocked him or avoided the topic altogether. "If you know about my misfortune," Tano said, trying to sound brave, "then you also know I don't bring good results." The old man walked closer, his steps slow but steady, and tapped his stick lightly on the ground. "Results are strange things," he said. "Sometimes they follow skill, sometimes they follow timing, and sometimes they follow luck." He said the last word as if it was something alive. Tano frowned slightly. Luck was a word villagers used often, but it always sounded like an excuse. The old man studied Tano's face for a moment, then asked, "Tell me, boy, do you believe luck can change?" Tano shrugged. "If it could, mine would have changed by now." The old man chuckled softly, not in mockery but in understanding. "What if luck were like water," he said, "flowing from one place to another? What if, for a short time, it could be borrowed?" Tano almost laughed, but the man's serious expression stopped him. The forest was quiet, the air still, as if even the birds were listening to this strange conversation. The old man lowered himself onto a nearby rock and gestured for Tano to sit. Something about his presence felt safe, like sitting near a village elder during story time, yet there was also a mystery to him that made Tano alert. From a small pouch tied to his waist, the man took out a simple coin. It was not shiny like new money, but it glowed softly in the fading light, as though it remembered many hands. He rolled it between his fingers and said, "I have walked many villages and seen many lives. Some people waste luck when they have it. Others never receive enough to show who they could be. You, Tano, are the second kind." Tano's heart beat faster. No one had ever spoken about his future with such confidence. "I can lend you luck," the old man continued calmly, "for 7 days. Not forever. Just enough to open doors that always stayed closed for you." Tano stared at the coin. His mind told him this sounded impossible, maybe even foolish, yet his life so far had given him little reason to refuse hope. Still, he asked carefully, "If luck can be borrowed, then it can be taken back." The old man nodded once. "Everything borrowed returns. That is the balance of the world." 1,000 thoughts rushed through Tano's mind. What if this was a trick? What if villagers were right and he truly carried misfortune? Would borrowed luck even stay with him? But another thought rose stronger than the rest. What if this was his only chance to change how people saw him? To change how he saw himself? What must I give in return? Tano asked quietly. The old man's smile returned, small and knowing. No gold, no labor, only a promise that when the 7 days end, you will return what is not yours without resistance. That sounded simple, almost too simple. Tano thought about the broken pots, the failed harvests, the laughter of children calling him unlucky. He thought about how one good week could bring him respect, maybe steady work, maybe a new beginning. His fingers tightened slightly. And if my life improves in those 7 days, he asked. The old man leaned forward. Then your life improves. Luck can open a door, but it cannot force you to walk through it wisely. That part will still be yours. Those words settled deep in Tano's chest. They didn't promise miracles, they promised opportunity. And opportunity was something he had never truly been given. Finally, Tano nodded. I accept, he said, his voice steady despite the storm of feelings inside him. The old man placed the coin in Tano's palm and gently closed his fingers around it. The coin felt warm, warmer than the evening air, and a strange calm spread through Tano's body. Not excitement, not fear, just a quiet sense that something had shifted. The old man stood up again, leaning on his carved stick. From sunrise tomorrow, he said, your 7 days begin. Tano looked up to ask another question, but the old man had already stepped back toward the trees. The shadows seemed to welcome him. Within moments, he was difficult to see, then impossible to see at all. Only the whispering leaves remained. Tano looked down at the coin in his hand, half expecting it to vanish, but it stayed there, solid and real. The sky was now painted in deep orange and purple as night approached. Unsure what else to do, Tano slipped the coin carefully into his pocket and began walking back toward his hut. His mind replayed every word of the strange meeting. Borrowed luck. 7 days. A promise to return it. It all sounded like a story told by elders to teach children lessons. Yet the warmth of the coin against his palm reminded him this was no ordinary tale. And as he reached the edge of the village, something small but unusual happened. A trader who had ignored him for weeks called out, Tano, do you have firewood to sell tomorrow? I might need some. It was a simple question, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like the beginning of something. It was a simple question, but for Tano, it echoed in his mind the entire night. A trader asking him for firewood in advance was not normal. Usually, he was the one begging people to buy. He barely slept, waking before the rooster's call, touching the coin in his pocket just to be sure it was still there. When dawn finally stretched its pale light across Zamora, Tano stepped outside with a strange mix of hope and caution. He gathered the best firewood he could find, tied it tightly, double-checking the rope this time, and carried it to the marketplace. The same trader from yesterday spotted him quickly. "Oh, good, you came," the man said, inspecting the bundle. Tano braced himself for criticism, but instead the trader nodded with approval. "Strong wood, dry, I'll take all of it." Then he offered a price that made Tano blink in disbelief. It was nearly double the usual amount. For a second, Tano thought he misheard. He even asked the man to repeat it. The trader simply shrugged. Good quality deserves good pay. Coins clinked into Tano's palm. Real coins, fair coins. As he walked away, his heart pounded. One good sale could be luck. But something deep inside whispered that the 7 days had truly begun. By the second day, the pattern continued. Tano helped an elderly woman repair her grain sacks, expecting little in return. While moving the sacks, he noticed one had a small tear at the bottom. As he lifted it, a few old coins spilled out, coins the woman thought she had lost seasons ago. Instead of accusing him, she praised his honesty when he returned them. Grateful, she rewarded him with a generous share. Word spread quickly. Tano is reliable, she told others. That single sentence began changing how people looked at him. On the third day, a traveling trader arrived from a neighboring village seeking someone to help organize goods. Normally, Tano would never be chosen, but the trader pointed at him almost immediately. "You look hard-working," he said. Tano worked carefully, arranging items, counting properly, speaking politely. By sunset, the trader offered him a small partnership, nothing huge, but enough to earn steady profit from future visits. Each evening, Tano returned to his hut in disbelief. He would take out the coin, stare at it, and whisper to himself, "Is this really happening?" morning, yet the coin remained silent, warm, and steady, like a quiet promise being kept. As the days rolled on, the village's attitude shifted like wind changing direction. People who once avoided him now greeted him first. Farmers asked for his help again. Children stopped calling him unlucky. Some even followed him around, curious about his sudden success. On the fourth and fifth days, Tano noticed something important. He wasn't just receiving luck, he was using it wisely. He started observing how traders negotiated. He learned which goods sold faster, which seasons favored which crops, how to speak calmly during bargaining. Before, he had worked without thinking ahead. Now, he planned. He saved part of every earning instead of spending it all. He asked questions and listened closely to answers. The borrowed luck opened doors, yes, but once inside, Tano paid attention to everything. Confidence slowly replaced the heaviness in his chest. When elders spoke in the market, he stood nearby and absorbed their knowledge. When mistakes almost happened, somehow they corrected themselves before becoming disasters. It felt as if the world was giving him a fair chance for the first time in his life. By the sixth day, respect followed him openly. One village elder even invited him to sit among grown traders during a discussion about crop routes. That had never happened before. Tano spoke little but listened much, and when he did share a thought, it made sense. People nodded. People agreed. That simple acceptance filled a space in his heart he hadn't realized was empty. But as sunset colored the sky that evening, a quiet worry crept in. 6 days were almost gone. He lay awake that night, staring at the roof of his hut, counting everything that had changed. He now had some savings, new connections, and most importantly, a different reputation. Still, a question bothered him: what happens when the luck leaves? Would people turn away again? Would buyers stop coming? He held the coin tightly, feeling its warmth. For the first time since receiving it, he didn't just feel grateful, he felt afraid to lose what it brought. Then came the seventh day. It was the most successful yet. A large grain deal went smoothly, earning him more than he had made in months before. A trader promised future business. Even the village headman praised his diligence publicly. By afternoon, Tano should have been celebrating. Instead, every small success reminded him that the countdown had reached its end. The sun began to lower, painting the sky in gold and red. His chest felt tight, not from failure but from the fear of returning to who he used to be. As evening approached, he found himself walking toward the forest without fully deciding to go there. His feet simply followed the familiar path. The same tall trees stood quietly, the same cool air brushed his skin. And just as the sun touched the horizon, a familiar calm presence filled the space around him. Tano didn't need to turn to know who had arrived. The old man was there, and the seventh day was ending. The old man was there, and the seventh day was ending. He stood beside the same baobab tree as before, leaning lightly on his carved walking stick, as if he had never truly left the forest at all. The fading sunlight outlined his figure in gold, and for a moment, he looked less like a traveler and more like a part of the forest itself, ancient, patient, and certain. Tano's throat felt dry. All the confidence he had built over the week suddenly trembled under the weight of what he knew must happen next. The old man did not speak immediately. He simply looked at Tano with calm eyes, the kind of look that sees more than words reveal. Finally, in a gentle voice, he said, 7 days pass quickly when fortune walks beside you. Tano forced a small smile but couldn't hide his worry. His mind raced with numbers, deals, faces in the market, new opportunities, if everything he feared might disappear by tomorrow. He reached into his pocket and felt the coin, still warm, still real. A part of him wished time could freeze right there between sunset and night. But the world does not pause for anyone, and deep down, Tano knew this meeting had always been part of the agreement. I have come for what is mine, the old man said softly, not as a demand but as a reminder. Tano hesitated. His fingers tightened around the coin. For a brief, selfish moment, a thought crossed his mind: what if I keep it? What if I ask for more time? After all, this single week had changed his life. But then he remembered the words spoken on the first day: everything borrowed returns. He slowly pulled out the coin and looked at it under the last light of the sun. It didn't look magical now, it looked simple, almost ordinary. Yet it had carried 7 days of miracles. If I return this, Tano asked quietly, will everything I gain disappear? The old man tilted his head slightly. Did the coin teach you how to tie stronger knots? Did it teach you how to speak to traders? Did it force people to trust your honesty? Tano blinked. The answer was no. The coin had opened doors, yes, but he had walked through them himself. Still, fear lingered. Luck never stays, the old man continued. If it did, people would stop growing, they would wait instead of work. Those words settled heavily but truthfully in Tano's heart. With a slow breath, Tano extended his hand and returned the coin. The moment the old man's fingers closed around it, the warmth left Tano's palm. Not painfully, just noticeably, like the fading of sunlight after dusk. The forest grew quieter. Tano expected to feel empty or panicked, but instead he felt strangely calm. The old man slipped the coin back into his pouch and nodded in approval. You honored your promise, he said. That already places you ahead of many. Tano looked up, gathering courage to ask one last question. Why help me at all? The old man's faint smile returned. Because you were ready. Luck given to the lazy becomes waste. Luck given to the willing becomes a lesson. Then, just like before, he stepped back. The shadows welcomed him, the trees seemed to close around him, and within moments, he was gone. No grand magic, no bright light, just a quiet departure. Tano stood alone again in the forest, but he did not feel like the same boy who first came there burdened by misfortune. He walked back to the village under a sky full of early stars, his mind quieter than it had been in years. The next morning, Tano woke with nervous energy. This would be the true test. He stepped into the marketplace expecting something to go wrong, a broken rope, a failed deal, a sudden insult. But none came. The day felt normal. Not miraculous, not terrible, just balanced. He sold his goods at fair prices, not double. One negotiation failed, but another succeeded. No disasters followed him. No strange blessings either. It was simply the kind of day most villagers called ordinary. At first, Tano felt unsure. Was the luck really gone? He watched people's faces closely. To his surprise, they still greeted him warmly. The trader who offered partnership still kept his word. The elder who respected his ideas still listened. No one called him unlucky. By afternoon, a realization slowly formed in his mind. The villagers' view of him had changed because his actions had changed. He was more careful, more confident, more thoughtful. The luck had introduced him to opportunity, but his behavior had built the trust that remained. That truth felt stronger than any magic. As the sun began to set, Tano sat outside his hut, thinking deeply about the past week. Before the coin, he believed fate controlled everything. After the coin, he understood something different. Luck might knock on a door, but it cannot force someone to prepare the house inside. His savings were real. His skills were real. His reputation was real. None of those had vanished with the coin. For the first time in his life, Tano did not feel cursed or chosen. He felt responsible for his own path. A small smile appeared on his face, not from excitement but from understanding. The fear that once lived in his chest had been replaced by quiet determination. Tomorrow would not be controlled by borrowed fortune. It would be shaped by his choices. And as night covered Zamora in gentle darkness, Tano looked toward the distant forest and whispered a soft thank you, not to magic, not to luck, but to the lesson hidden within both. He finally understood. Luck had visited him, but growth had stayed. He finally understood. Luck had visited him, but growth had stayed. That realization did not make Tano rich overnight, and it did not remove all hardship from his path, but it changed the way he woke up each morning. Before, he rose with worry, wondering what might go wrong. Now, he rose with intention, asking what he could do right. The following weeks tested this new mindset. Some days were slow in the market. Some deals failed. Once, a bundle of goods arrived late and cost him profit. Yet unlike the past, these moments did not break his spirit or confirm some curse. Instead, he adjusted, learned, and tried again. He began keeping small records of his trades, marking which routes were better and which seasons favored certain goods. He listened more than he spoke when older traders shared experiences. People noticed this quiet discipline. Respect grew naturally, not from sudden miracles but from steady reliability. The same villagers who once avoided him now greeted him with nods of approval. No one used the nickname Unlucky Tano anymore. In fact, new children growing up in Zamora never even heard it. And slowly, without announcement or celebration, Tano built a life that felt stable beneath his feet. Months turned into years, and the small mud hut at the edge of the village no longer suited the life he was building. With honest savings, Tano repaired it, then expanded it, turning it into a neat home with a strong roof and a storage space for goods. He did not become greedy. He remembered clearly clearly what it felt like to have nothing. So when young boys came looking for small jobs like he once did, he treated them fairly. He paid properly, taught them how to tie bundles securely, how to speak politely to buyers, how to watch for cheating without becoming suspicious of everyone. Some evenings, he shared meals with them, telling simple stories about patience and planning. He never spoke proudly about his success, and he never pretended he had all the answers. That humility made people trust him even more. Traders from neighboring villages began recognizing his name. If Tano agrees, they would say, the deal is safe. His reputation traveled farther than he ever had as a child. Yet inside, he remained the same boy who once sat alone in the forest asking life for a fair chance. One afternoon, many years later, a group of young men sat around him near the marketplace, listening as elders often did when sharing wisdom. One of them finally asked the question people had been wondering for a long time. Tano, the young man said, how did your life change so much? Some say you were once the most unlucky boy here. The others nodded, curious and respectful. Tano paused, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he wanted to choose the right words. He looked at their eager faces and remembered his younger self in them. Then he spoke calmly, there was a time I believed the world had closed its doors on me. Then, for a short while, those doors opened. He did not describe the old man in detail, nor the coin, nor the forest meeting as magic. Instead, he explained the lesson. Opportunity came, he said, but it would have meant nothing if I stayed careless. I learned to prepare myself so when chances appeared, I could hold them. The young men listened closely. Some expected a secret trick or hidden treasure story, but what they heard was simpler and stronger. Hard work alone can be blind. Luck alone can be wasted. But awareness changes everything. As seasons continued to pass, Tano became one of Zamora's most respected traders. Not the richest, not the most powerful, but among the most trusted. And in a village, trust is wealth that cannot be stolen. Sometimes, during quiet evenings, he would walk near the forest path again, not out of sadness but out of gratitude. He would sit by the same fallen log where his life once turned and remember the boy he used to be. Once or twice, he thought he saw a distant figure between the trees, a tall silhouette leaning on a stick, but whenever he looked carefully, there was nothing there. He never chased the image. Some mysteries, he felt, were meant to remain gentle questions. Whether the old man was real, a spirit, or simply a turning point shaped by destiny no longer mattered. The lesson had already done its work. Tano no longer wished for borrowed luck. He preferred the kind built slowly by choices, habits, and courage to keep going. Years later, when Tano himself had grey in his hair and younger traders called him uncle out of respect, he shared one final proverb that people in Zamora still repeat. He would say, luck may knock on your door once, maybe twice, but if your house is empty, it will leave quickly. Fill your house with skill, honesty, and effort, and even when luck walks away, your life will remain full. The elders approved of those words and passed them on to children. And so, the story of the boy once called unlucky became a story of growth instead. Not a tale about magic coins or mysterious strangers, but a tale about what happens when a person is ready to change. And in Zamora, whenever someone blamed fate for their struggles, an elder would gently remind them, even borrowed luck cannot help a closed hand, but a willing hand can build its own fortune.